Echo 5, do you copy? Echo 5.
Echo 2, good morning. Nice of you to drop by.
Feeling alright, sir? Thought we lost you.
Right now, I feel like I can take on this whole podcast myself.
I know what you mean. Ready to send that transmission to Echo Base?
Yes, sir. R10, patch through.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Hoth Transmissions. Tonight we are going to be covering Ahsoka Part 2. And I would also like to introduce one of our new co-hosts. This is Sam from the UK. He's going to be going by Echo 9. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Sam, or Echo 9.
Hey everyone, so I am Sam. I grew up on Star Wars. Had the VHS. This is how old I am. So I grew up with the videotapes of the original 3 movies, and me and my dad would watch them sort of religiously every other month. So pretty much grew up on it. And seeing the characters and the storyline progress, it just draws you into the world in a way that is so hard to explain.
No, I completely agree. That's kind of where I'm at. Like, I grew up with the VHS as well, and the special editions and the release in the movies or in the theaters. So I grew up at this. I can totally relate with you. So with as much Star Wars as we've had, what would you consider to be your favorite trilogy? And I know you might say the original trilogy, but like, does anything stand out to you? Like,
so I don't have a favorite trilogy per se. I obviously, sort of, as most people would like, Episode 3 is quite high up there. Empire Strikes Back as well, Return of the Jedi, and I'm a really big fan of the Clone Wars movie. I went on holiday, a family holiday to Australia, and the cinema that was in the area that we were staying was showing the Clone Wars movie. So I just went there one evening and just sat by myself in a nearly empty movie theater, just watching the movie by myself.
so what about the movie drew you in? Like, I understand, like, the Clone Wars. Like, for me, the Clone Wars as a whole is what brought me in. The Clone Wars movie was a nice start to it, but what about the movie that drew you in?
I think the fact that it was more Star Wars at a time when there was no more Star Wars, and obviously it led to the series, but it filled in the gap, or started filling in the gap between 2 and 3, and just the fact that it was more Star Wars on the big screen, that's what drew me in, and animated as well. It is something different.
I actually think because of that movie, it introduced more. I want to say more. More content in order to be able to create the Clone Wars, and which led into Rebels and maybe even the live action shows. So
Yeah.
it was because, like, we were mostly familiar. Okay, Star Wars, it's movies, but it kind of opened a gateway to, okay, we got a movie in theaters, something brand new. Now we're jumping into a TV series that only lasted 5 seasons, and then they added a 6th season, and then Disney took over, and now we got a 7th season, which is pushing into Tales of the Jedi, and we're working off the characters that were created because of that movie,
Yeah,
which is phenomenal.
And obviously introduced Ahsoka.
Yeah, exactly. Like, without the Clone Wars, we wouldn't have the Ahsoka series that we're watching now.
Yeah. So it owes a lot for a sort of animated movie that a lot of people didn't like when it first came out. It's opened the door to everything. Everything modern has come from this one thing.
Yeah, I was on the fence with the movie at first as well, because I saw it in theaters, and I was like, okay, all right, it's cool, but it's very cheesy with what's his face, the Hut. I forget his name. Not Gardula.
Oh, is it Zero?
Zero
Yeah.
the Hut. That character to me was just off-putting. But once you got into the series and the actual Clone Wars, and then you see the bounty hunter arc in season 2 where they're rescuing him, like you get so accustomed to that style. It's like, okay, this is what Star Wars is. Star Wars is not meant to be this drawn out seriousness. It's supposed to be silly. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be like this outlandish thing. And Zero the Hutt kind of opened up to this whole movie gave Star Wars a different tone, but it still felt like Star Wars. So it was really cool. And so I've come to appreciate it because I remember when Clone Wars came out, I refused to watch the TV show. I watched the first episode and I was like, it's cool, but eh. But then I remember they introduced Darth Maul to the series, and I'm like, okay, let me take a look at this. Then I went back and watched the first 2 seasons. Like I go back on the first 2 seasons now, and it's like, okay, why was I so critical on this? Like this is some really good content, and so I can see why you like Clone Wars, or at least the movie, because it opened the doors for a lot of things.
Yeah, definitely.
So very cool. All right, so guys, tonight we will be discussing Ahsoka Part 2. So watching this episode, what were your initial thoughts? What did you like about it?
So obviously, like to start off with, you've got Sabine in the hospital from the episode before, and firstly, I want to say David Tennant, as a Brit and David Tennant being a fellow Brit, it is great to have him back in Star Wars because he was in the Clone Wars and he was in Rebels. So to have him again voicing the live action version of the droid that he
Oh my god, I did not know he was in Rebels. What character did he play? Because I knew he did Huyang in Clone Wars.
Yeah, so if I'm right, he was in Rebels a bit. I think it's like one episode or something, still doing the same.
I'm sure.
The same thing. But yeah, just having him back in it, and
I've always been a big fan of him. I've seen a few episodes of Doctor Who, and I've seen some of his other work, and I've never really followed him in that respect, but I've always seen him as a great actor, and it only solidifies watching him this season. Like Huyang, like that droid is actually pretty cool. Like he's one of my favorite things of the season so far. Him, Baylan, and Shin.
Yes, yeah. I mean, that in itself is phenomenal acting. From Shin. It's just her lack of facial expression, and that scares the living daylights out of me because
especially in this episode.
Yeah, you don't know what she's thinking, what she's going to do.
I mean, you kind of see what she's thinking, but her facial expressions at the same time don't. Because I remember there's a point in this episode, like you look at the end of the episode, and you have the holograms of her and Baylan talking to Morgan, and Morgan's like talking about killing Ahsoka, and he's like, "Yeah, it's a shame." And then Shin kind of like does this like quick turn and looks at him like, "What?"
Like,
but at the same time,
who is
she's
this
like, "Really?"
It's like we're trying to kill.
Yeah, no, it's not even that. She's like, okay, you've been training me for this, but here you're starting sentimentality. She's like confused, like, okay, you're teaching me these things, but this is a new concept to me. Like, you're sentimental. Like, what the hell? Like, honestly. And so I thought that was kind of really cool. Like, she knows her master, but she doesn't. And so she's learning something new. Because by the time that we're recording this episode, guys, like, we are almost to the finale. And seeing the character, like a lot of the stuff, like rewatching this episode, it has been showing me, or at least been enlightening for me, because I'm seeing things of these characters that I did not pick up in the beginning. And as these characters have progressed to the end of the season, I'm like, oh my gosh, I did not realize this character was being developed, and it makes sense for where they're at now. And so for Shin, she's very conflicted
I was say that,
between her master.
I've got to agree, and because I obviously you mentioned that you rewatched it. I rewatched the episode as well earlier to sort of refresh my memory, because we are further down the line. And to me, there's a lot of similarities between Shin and Anakin, in the way that you don't know how reckless they can actually be. I mean, obviously, if you've seen the films and everything, you know Anakin's story and who he becomes, but you don't know Shin. And I'm
Yeah, I mean, you look
to
at Anakin in Clone Wars; he's very reckless.
Yeah, so it's interesting to see where Shin in this episode starts going down a path that we don't know where it leads. And even jumping ahead in episodes, we still don't know, which is
Yeah, we're on
I'm
episode
loving
7.
it.
I have an idea of where she's going, but at the same time, I don't.
Yeah,
Like, I've got a lot of
yeah.
theories.
And I can't wait to hear the theories. When later on down the line, with your other with whoever you get on to do them. I'm interested to hear everything.
Well, my theory is Shin is because in Norse mythology, which we learned from Lady Fluffy last week, she told me about the Norse mythology of Balin and Skull, how one is chasing the moon, the other one's chasing the sun. Balin is the one chasing the moon, and Skull is the one that Hati is the one that's chasing the sun. So I feel, based off the things that he's been doing this season, his sentimentality, like he treated her a certain way, and up until this point of them connecting to Thrawn and all that, she's only thought one way, and now she's seeing a softer side of Balin. She's like, okay, you taught me all this, but I like, even with Thrawn, like Thrawn's like, oh yeah, she can meet her friend, but we may kill her or whatever. And Hati's like, you promised that she'd be able to meet her friend. Like, she was conflicted. She's like you can see that she's good and bad. And so ultimately I think she's going to turn good and help Ezra. She might die in the process, but she's going to help Ezra, Ahsoka, and Sabine. That's my theory.
That's a good theory. That is, I can't wait to find out if it happens or not.
Yeah, me too.
So,
I could be wrong.
Who knows? That's the beauty of it. We don't know. which is great. There's a lot of stories still to be told, and part of me hopes that you are right. But another point to mention is Thrawn, who at this episode,
Thrawn.
the second episode, the one that we're on about now, we still haven't re-met him, because obviously we've seen him in Rebels, and we don't know. We don't really know where he is up until the point where the map comes back into play.
Correct.
And it's a different galaxy. That the cinematography and the storyline for this episode was so well done that you're sort of drawn in from start to the very end.
Dude, that's one of the points I listed as well.
And even the credits, and I kind of noticed something with the end credits, that if you watch them, it kind of starts to give the main plot points of the story arc away. Like, you've got the Purrgil going to this other galaxy. So I'm a big fan. I have to admit that might be a bit biased, but I think that this episode is one of the best. Obviously not the best, because spoilers come up in a couple of episodes' time, but it's up there. And the one thing that I would like to say about is the shipyards, the Corellia shipyards.
Oh, Corellia, yes.
Yeah, and because we saw them in Solo, the Han Solo movie, and so you kind of see before, or at the beginning of the Empire, and now you see it after the Empire. And oh man, I don't know where to start, because it was so good. And the big engine and the hyperdrive that they were building / taking. What do you think that's for? That the whole hyperdrive ring that they've done, because that goes back to, again, sort of pre-Clone Wars era, with the Jedi
that goes
ships
back to
had them.
prequels. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly what I was gonna. The moment that you asked me, I was like, it goes back to the whole Jedi rings. Like the Jedi starfighters could not travel by themselves; they had to have this ring. And so you're looking at Morgan Elsbeth, and she's like, "We need to get to this part. We got this map. No way we're gonna get it on what we got. Like literally, the ring has, I forget how many hyperdrives she mentions, but they're farming for them. They're trying to find where they can. And
Yeah.
I found Corellia to be such a very intriguing thing because it kind of reminded me of Jedi Survivor or Fallen Order,
Yes.
because that's where he started.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the Clone War stuff after the Empire took over is just a bunch of harvesting ships, and now the Republic is doing the same thing. They're like, okay, all right, so Clone Wars, Empire takes over, we're gonna harvest whatever Jedi stuff, and now we're seeing a parallel. The Republic is doing the same thing, and Harry even mentions like, we're not working on ships big enough that require this, so why are you harvesting this Super Star Destroyer hyperdrive? Like, what's the purpose? And I found that whole sequence interesting because I have a whole talk about Corellia in itself. But I mean, it's just crazy going forth. It's like Morgan has such an idea, like she's connected to the Night Sisters in this other galaxy. Spoiler alert. But she is talking to them, and so she knows she needs something bigger than what ship they have in the galaxy. So you know that there's been some thought into this. Like she's been in prison, but they've been working on this ring even while she was in prison. So this has probably been in the works since Mando season 1,
If not earlier than that.
if not earlier. Like this could have been like a huge plan because Thrawn's been gone for like 10 years, and ever since Palpatine, because so Mando season 1 takes place what 5 years after Return of the Jedi, and that's when like most of the remnant Imperials are running around, and Morgan's probably one of the first people to say, okay, Palpatine's gone. Probably not familiar with Palpatine's exegol and cloning facilities, even though there's some people that are like Gideon, but he's using it for his own advantage. And then we have Morgan, who's like, no, I've been hearing, I've been dealing with Thrawn. I'm a Night Sister, and she might have been hearing from the Night Sisters for however long. And so she's like, no, if we want to reunite the Empire, we need to bring Thrawn. I have no idea about Palpatine, but Thrawn is the next best thing that we can have.
Yeah, it's like Thrawn is he could be the next emperor of the galaxy for all Morgan knows.
Which is cool because they're building to the Legends trilogy of Heir to the Empire, and I feel that's where they're leading to. Because I think Thrawn's going to be in the movie.
I'm
hoping
so. Yeah, because one theory that I've got about the giant hyperdrive ring, because that's big for what it needs to be, really. Are they going to attach it to the Star Destroyer? And is that how Thrawn gets back into the main galaxy?
I'm assuming so, because he would have done it himself already. Because, like, by the time a lot of our listeners listen, you hopefully you've seen the entire series, but the camera, like, his whole Star Destroyer looks like it's pretty beat up, based from what Ezra did to him. So there's no, if he were to get back, he would have done it already. So there's going to be some way that he's going to connect it to that star ring. Like, I see no other way unless they. No, that's the only way, because I don't see Thrawn preparing any other way to get onto it, because they'd spend more work to connect all the hyperdrives to the Star Destroyer to do what he needs, and to let it on go through hyperspace. This Star Destroyer is going to be destroyed, so he needs something that's going to be able to sustain it.
Yeah. One other sort of main thing that I really want to talk about is the throwback to the painting in Rebels that Sabine goes up to and just touches. And
did you know that was a retcon?
No.
So they redid that scene because it was in Rebels, and originally, so this is supposed to be the exact same scene that happened in Rebels that we see, because we don't know the time frame. But Dave Filoni retconned it so she can be able to wear the gray clothes, because I know in the Rebels she's wearing white, and so he changed it for her wearing gray at that point to bring Sabine onto this mission, and so they're using the Ahsoka the white basically for later. And so they basically did the same scene, but just changed her clothes for it. That's the only retconning they did on it.
Wow. I genuinely did not know that, but that's... I mean, it goes to show how planned these things are now. And, one sort of throwaway, cutaway scene, mid-credit scene from Rebels to this entire series. It's, it's been... We're sort of looking at MCU style planning now, and I love how interconnected things are, but you can also just enjoy watching them as standalone things. So you don't
100%.
necessarily need to see Rebels to fully know who Ahsoka is, and where
it helps,
she's at
but you don't need it.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean that painting itself is so well done,
so iconic.
Yeah, I couldn't tell if it was CGI from the animated series from Rebels,
or if they actually repainted it.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they repainted it, but they that's how great the animation was in Rebels. So if you haven't watched Rebels, it's phenomenal.
Yeah, needs to be done, definitely. So obviously, because I've kind of rambled on about my favorite points. What did you like in the episode?
So for me, a lot of the standouts, for me, what I really liked about the episode is a lot of the cinematography. I loved Andor, and we're going to be moving forth after we discuss the entire Ahsoka series. We're going to move into Andor next. And I'll talk more about that later, but I love the cinematography. Andor had such a darker tone to the whole series that we were not used to in Star Wars. And I'm getting the same vibe out of Ahsoka, but we're also getting a little bit more lightheartedness. We're getting a darker tone of Star Wars, but it still feels Star Wars. We're not losing that touch that we're out of the whole Jedi, and I'm getting an original trilogy feel, but a little bit more serious.
Yeah, it's kind of got it's a cross between A New Hope and Empire, because Empire was a much darker film than A New Hope.
Yes. And so that's kind of what I've noticed with it, and that's what I'm really liking about the whole series, because we're getting really good story. The only issues I have so far is I'm trying to figure out what was the point of Sabine getting stabbed in the recent episode, because now she's healing. Was it just the point just to keep her out of the mission that Ahsoka and Hera are doing, or because they don't talk about her wound after this episode? She literally gets stabbed, heals, and then does the mural scene, and then now we move forward to the rest of the series, and it's never talked about again. And I have to say, poor Qui-Gon. Qui-Gon must be rolling in his Force Ghost grave, going, okay, we've got, what is it, Sabine. We've got the Inquisitor Reva, and who also they didn't really explain how she survived Vader stabbing her again.
So that one is... with Qui-Gon and Sabine, it's a matter of where they was stabbed. So Qui-Gon got stabbed straight through the middle. So his spine was gone, and no
that's
amount
fair.
of no amount of
you destroyed the spine, it's either paralyzed or death. There's no in between.
Whereas Sabine got stabbed in her side, so it wasn't as fatal. With the Reva,
I mean, if Ahsoka wasn't there, it probably would have been fatal.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. And I think timing wise was really good. But I do agree with your point that it's never mentioned again. She doesn't have any sort of effects of it, but then I guess because you see like the Bacta injection and everything, so maybe
They do
it's
say
just,
she's fully healed, but she has a scar.
yeah. At least
So
they
I'm
didn't
curious,
go
like,
down the route of what's her name from Book of Boba Fett, where they replace,
what's her face? Shinnick,
yeah,
with
where
the
they
whole
replace,
cyber
yeah,
changes. Because I
I
feel like you have, what, thousands of years of Jedi, right? Lightsabers are common. You figure within the thousands of years that I don't care about force healing. Like you can throw out the window. Like, why didn't Obi-Wan heal Qui-Gon or whatever when he got to him? First of all, Obi-Wan probably didn't know about force healing, or he was not good at it. It's speciality. He was more, his Sith was his speciality, but maybe force healing wasn't. But also at the same time, it's like Ahsoka got to Sabine at a crucial moment within the amount of time. They have thousands of years of Jedi. You got to imagine that they know how to heal stab wounds. It's like, okay, you got stabbed here. Oh, sorry, dude. There's nothing we can do for you. Or there's, okay, we're going to try this. Hopefully you'll come out of it. Or 3, yeah, we can heal that. And Sabine, I feel she is between 2 and 3. Like,
yeah,
hopefully we can heal that, but you got hit in the spot where you're going to recover. Plus plot armor.
yeah. I mean that's the main thing, isn't it?
And that's why I think her being stabbed was like completely pointless. Because I was like, okay, I know she's going to be more than 2 episodes, so why stab her? I think it would be better if she had like lost an arm or hand or something, kind of like the way that Luke did. Like, it would have been a better character development for her. It's like, okay, I'm going against Shin. Yeah, I got stabbed. I healed from it because we got back to whatever. I can heal from it, whatever. You lose a hand, that's more permanent. It's like, okay, I lost a hand, I lost an arm. Give me a Beskar armored arm, and she can sit there and block lightsabers with one arm, and have her left or right arm with the lightsaber in the other. Like that would, I think that would have been cooler, because she's struggling with the Force, and we even see Hewing saying, "Oh yeah, if the Jedi Order was around right now, like you would fall short of all the greatest Jedi. Like they would not pay attention to you at all." And I think
I
if she
laughed at that
lost,
line.
I did too. And I feel if she lost an arm or a limb, it would have given her more reason to be better than what she was. Because I don't feel any motivation with her whatsoever. It's like, yeah, I got stabbed, whatever, but I want to help Ahsoka. Okay, well, why do you want to help Ahsoka? And even Huang is like, Ahsoka left you, but at the same time, you haven't shown any interest to come back. So you're sitting here questioning why Ahsoka is helping you. It's like, because Hera sees that you both need each other. You're both being stubborn. So Ahsoka's not going to use you because you're not showing any interest. And you don't see any interest in Ahsoka because Ahsoka's not doing the same thing because you guys are both freaking stubborn. So Huang is like, you gave up. So I'm a droid of logic. So you're going to sit here and accuse Ahsoka of stuff, but I'm going to sit here and tell you it's like, well, you haven't shown any effort on the other side. So I don't care how weak you are. Here's the lightsaber. You made modifications to it. It was Ezra's, but you've changed it enough. It's yours. So stop complaining. Start training. I don't care what you think. I don't care how weak you are. Jedi probably wouldn't have picked you, but don't give up. Keep training.
Yeah.
And I thought
Is
that's why I love Huang so much, because he's so honest and he's so blunt. He's so logical.
yeah. Is Sabine actually slightly force sensitive, or is she just?
I think it's because I've seen a lot of quotes. Like, I went back and watched Rebels, and Kanan says that the Force is a part of everything. And I think that's kind of the grain that they're pulling at, saying, okay, even George Lucas, and I remember before Star Wars became more developed, even with the movies, before he developed the Force and all that, I remember Luke or even Han. Like, Han was Force sensitive, Luke was Force sensitive, but it just depended on how strong you were in the Force to be considered a Jedi or a Force user. So the Force is involved in everything, but it just really depends on your level of training. So it's like kind of think of like today's society. Like look at us. Like you can be athletic, you can be smart, you can be great in math, you can be great in science. Some people are just natural at it. And some people have to struggle with it. And so everybody has the potential, but some have to work harder at it than others. And I'm thinking that's kind of what Huang was trying to tell Sabine is like, yeah, you're probably not the most force sensitive, but you need to work harder to be able to be recognizable. And so it's like you may not be good at it, but keep trying. Like if this is something you want, keep trying. Otherwise, you're gonna keep failing if you give up. And that's kind of how I saw it when he was talking to her. Because everybody's force sensitive, according to George Lucas, and I think that they're trying to allude to that and trying to give that thing. Because even Kanan said it in Rebels, and they're trying to push that. It's like, okay, anybody can use force, but how strong are you depends on you. Like Anakin being the chosen one, like nobody can be on his level because he was just gifted.
Yeah.
But that's kind of how I see it.
No, I love that explanation. That's I think when the season is over, I'm going to rewatch it all start to finish, and I'm going to keep that in mind because in my mind it was, well, she's not force sensitive. She's she had the dark saber for a while in Rebels,
And she trained with Kanan with it, so she knows how to use it.
Yeah, so
at least a lightsaber.
How is that different to a lightsaber? So it was in my mind. How did she lose that fight against Shin in the first episode? But now
because Huang even mentioned he's. Sorry to interject, but Huang said, "Okay, you've modified Ezra's lightsaber, but have you kept up the training?" And Sabine kind of gave that look of no, and to me, that's why she failed against Shin. Because we see later in season, she goes against Shin later after Ahsoka is working with her on the ship, and there's a difference.
Yeah.
And no, I want to say there's this what is it? I forget the name of the comic book series. It might be called Star Wars Infinity, but it goes over A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. And it's basically a what if series. And so when Luke is on Hoth, he dies. And Han is there when he dies. And instead of Luke getting the vision, Han gets a vision to go to Dagobah, and Han is the one that trains to be a Jedi to stop the Empire. And so I always found that interesting because, like, Han Solo, like, you would never see a Jedi, but it was kind of an allusion to the Force being in everybody.
Okay, I really do love that theory, and like I say, when I go back and rewatch Ahsoka start to finish in what will basically be a day, I'm going to keep that in mind and go with it, go in with fresh eyes, because it is something that I never thought about. So one thing I just got to talk about Chopper for a sec. I love that droid.
Chopper is definitely in my top 3. So seeing Chopper in this episode was phenomenal.
Yeah, I'm glad they gave him something to do and wasn't just sort of a glorified sort of cameo. Because obviously, we had Hera and the on the Corellia shipyards, and seeing Chopper there, it was like, oh, are they just going to have Chopper there as her droid and nothing's going to happen? But Chopper's got attitude in this.
Yes, he kept his personality from Rebels, which I loved. Like, I made a note on here. Let's see. Like, okay, I don't want to get into the Corellia aspect yet because there's so much I want to talk about on that. So I want to kind of deal with Ahsoka and Sabine and talk about them until we get to that point. But with Chopper, like, they're in space and he has this interaction between him and Hera. And I know Dave Filoni voices Chopper. And I'm curious if he actually says real lines and then does some kind of technological thing to make it sound more like a droid to distort what he's saying. But I'm not going to lie. There's a point where I thought Chopper said, "What the hell?" And it sounded very distorted, but I could hear the words. And it's like, I don't know if you caught that too.
Yeah, and it's like, where's my stuff or something. You can definitely hear something, words being said. And then,
because Hera's like, I know it didn't go through your stuff. It's like, that's funny.
Yeah. And I know that, people can understand droids to a degree, the beeps and
because
whistles
of coding it. Yeah.
But I think with Chopper, there is definitely more words that have sort of been heavily digitized, but they are there.
Oh, 100%. I feel every line that Dave Filoni's given Chopper has been digitized. And because I was talking to one of my friends at work, and I was like, dude, literally, I feel like I can understand Chopper. Like, I feel when Chopper speaks, and I know exactly what he's saying because I can hear words. I don't care how digitalized it is, I can hear words. Because he's very profane, just like R2. Like he's got as much attitude as R2, if not more. And it's very hard to choose between him and R2, but R2 being the original, I have to go with R2. But Chopper is a very strong second.
I have to agree with that, definitely. Chopper's mannerisms have clearly come from R2, especially in this episode. It's prominent that you can see the inspiration was, some of the things that R2 would have, in air quotes here, said, but then turned into sort of Chopperisms and given that extra
100%.
So you mentioned you mentioned the sort of relationship between Ahsoka and Sabine.
We find out more about those two this episode. And one of the first notes that I mentioned or that I saw watching the episode. So we have Ahsoka standing there while Sabine is in, I want to say, asleep or coma or whatever. Ahsoka's sitting there staring out of the window. And I found it very interesting that we were hearing thoughts of Sabine that Ahsoka probably would not have known. So I was wondering, what did you get from that? Did you think Ahsoka was sitting there tuning into the Force to hear what was going through Sabine's head while she was asleep?
Yeah, I mean that's the impression that I got was, and later on, sort of in the same sort of scene, you see Ahsoka going back to where the Sabine Shin fight was, and she uses the Force to sort of sense what had actually happened, and you kind of see the prelude to that when Sabine's in the hospital, and you hear the voices
of Ezra and all that.
Yeah, so it's like what I think it was Ahsoka trying to work out what Sabine is doing or where her heart lies, basically.
So basically what I got from that, because we hear Hera talking to Ahsoka, she's like, okay, well, do you think Sabine is ready to become a Jedi? I think you should give her a second chance. And Ahsoka's like, well, there's no way to tell if you're ready unless you feel it. The Jedi will feel it and Sabine will know it too. So there's no point of saying, oh yeah, how do you know when you're ready? It's like, you'll know when you're ready. And I think that's kind of what Ahsoka was kind of trying to feel is like, okay, she may have ditched me in the first episode to take the map, but how much was the Force guiding her and how much was it her own intellect? Because Sabine's a very capable person, but how much was the Force guiding her? And I think that's kind of why Ahsoka was kind of trying to listen into her coma. One, to make sure she was okay, that she'd survive it. Two, she needed to know what's going to happen. And that the map was more about finding Ezra, or was it to stop a war? As we find out later. And I think Ahsoka has a lot of purpose. It's like she's more studious and more understanding of the situation, and whereas Sabine is driven by emotion. And I think that's what Ahsoka's trying to figure out is like, how much emotion is she driven by? It's going to the whole thing of Luke going to Yoda. Yoda's going, he's too old. He's too set in his ways. Like, how can I train somebody that's so much like his father, so driven by emotion rather than actual training?
Yeah.
Because Sabine basically just took the map. Oh yeah, I'll sit here. I'll hold the map. And then next thing you know, she's gone back to her apartment and she's lost the map, and everything's destroyed. So it's like, is she ready? I don't know. And I think that's what Ahsoka was doing whilst Sabine was healing. She's trying to get into her mind and see where she was at mentally. And I still don't, me personally, I don't think Sabine is ready. Should she give up? No. I'm with Huang on that. Like, Huang is probably the smartest character in the show.
Yeah.
But
yeah, definitely.
But Sabine shouldn't give up. Like, anybody, if you want something enough, I'm going to sit here and say, don't give up. Just do what you got to do. If you're struggling, just do better. That's all there is to it. Don't give up. Once you give up, then you failed. So that's how I see Sabine at this moment with Ahsoka, because their whole relationship is very interesting. Because Ahsoka is the one that left her, and I'm still trying to figure out why Ahsoka left Sabine. Was it because Ahsoka just got frustrated and left her because she saw no potential, or did Ahsoka have other reasons for leaving?
I look at it in the way that Sabine is emotional, obviously with the hunt for Ezra, and that's where her heart lies. And Ahsoka has seen a similar thing with Anakin, and maybe it's kind of more that she doesn't want the same thing to happen to Sabine that happened to Anakin, where Anakin was turned to the dark side by emotion, by emotional blackmail, and maybe in
That's a very good
Ahsoka's
point.
own way, it's her trying to protect Sabine from history repeating itself more than it already is with the, re-emergence of Thrawn.
Yeah, because I don't know who's going to be the co-host on episode 5, but that's actually one of the biggest things. Like, Ahsoka is traumatized from Rebels. Like, she's traumatized of Anakin becoming Vader. She goes to Rebels, finds Vader becoming Vader, or finds Vader is Anakin, goes through the whole thing, and then Return of the Jedi happens, and Anakin's dead.
Yeah.
Like, this at this point, I think, because okay, so season 3 Ahsoka happens consequently with Mando. Ahsoka happens consequently with season 3 Mando. So at this point, Ahsoka has met Luke. So she has talked with Luke, found out Luke brought Anakin back, but Anakin is dead. I feel Ahsoka does not have that closure yet. And so when she's training Sabine before she meets Luke, because it seems like it's a period of time that between them training, that Ahsoka sees those same mannerisms in Sabine. I don't care how strong she is or weak she is, but Ahsoka doesn't want to see that happen again. And so she has a lot of closure she needs to bring to be where she needs to be. So Ahsoka's dealing with a lot. Ahsoka is very unsure of where she stands in the galaxy. Right now, it's about her finding Thrawn and stopping a war. And she's put an entire galaxy's worth of pressure on herself that she's talked to Hera about it, and Hera's doing her best to help her with it. But as I see later on, that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
A lot of pressure. Imagine, I know a lot of people talk about holding the world's like weight upon your shoulders, like Atlas, the Greek god or Greek titan. But imagine being Ahsoka holding the galaxy's pressure. That's a lot. It's like, okay, Anakin failed, but Anakin ultimately came back. But I don't want to be the reason to create another Vader.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, let's not ignore the fact as well that Ahsoka turned away from the Jedi as well. So she's now
That's true.
she's trying to train someone in the Jedi arts when she herself didn't finish her own training. You know,
and we go down the whole Luke Skywalker sequel trilogy. Like,
yeah,
I don't mean to hit on the sequels, but I mean, Luke did the same thing, trying to recreate the Jedi Order based off of what he knew, and it ultimately failed. And Ahsoka's doing the same thing.
yeah. So I think the dynamic between Ahsoka, because towards the end of the episode, Ahsoka does call Sabine her Padawan again, and you know, you see the smile on Sabine's face, but Ahsoka still looks a bit concerned when she said it. Like, is this the right thing? Am I doing the right thing? Yeah, I mean, that's just how it came across to me, but it feels like, and again, it's quite prominent in this episode at the beginning where Ahsoka's basically like, "Now you've done enough for now. Just stay here in the hospital and rest." You know, it's
Yeah,
like,
I when that happened, I was like, "That's a big ouch." It's like, "Oh, I can help you. You've done enough." Oh,
yeah,
ouch. Okay, all right.
yeah,
I get the point.
you've done enough damage now. Just you know, but is it because again, Ahsoka's trying to guard herself from, like we've already said, you know, about, you know, from the past happening again, and you see the relationship between these two characters develop even more in further episodes, but here it is quite prominent that there is something in Ahsoka's mind.
And it's crazy because like Ahsoka is trying so hard not to include Sabine. She's only trying to use Sabine as much as Sabine is useful, and it's not in her doing. And it's funny, and that's why I'm not gonna lie. This is why I love Hera. Like even in Rebels, Hera was the mother figure. Hera's the one that went in between everything. She was the peacemaker between Kanan and Ezra and Kanan and Sabine. She even had a discussion with Sabine when she was learning the Darksaber. Tara's like, Kanan, why are you like? We talked about this last episode with Fluffy, but I'll talk to you about it again because I find it very prominent. Is that she's like, Kanan, what are you doing different with Sabine than you are with Ezra? You're harder on Sabine than you were Ezra. What's the deal? And Ezra plays that mother figure, and I think the actress really did her research to portray that in the live action Ahsoka because honestly, Hera's the one that's manipulating Ahsoka and Sabine in a good way. Like
Yeah,
she's guide. I won't say manipulating. I'll say she's guiding them to a relationship that they should have had, but both of them are so stubborn to acknowledge. And because of circumstances, they have to rely on each other. Like Ahsoka would not have gone to Sabine if she didn't use Sabine. And Hera's the one that put that mindset in her. It's like, oh yeah, well let's see what Sabine can do. And then Sabine even questions it, and then Hugh Wang is like, oh no. It's like, well, you're not putting forth the effort. And then Hugh Wang leaves, and then Hera is sitting there talking to Sabine on her in the hospital, saying, Ahsoka needs you, she just won't say it. It's like, I don't care what you're thinking. Get yourself ready. You guys need each other. I don't care what you guys think. You guys are both being stupid. You're both being stubborn. You need each other. And so I love Hera so much in the series. She, again, another one of my favorite characters. Like I was hesitant about the look of Hera in the beginning, watching the trailers because I'm so familiar with the animated series, but it's grown on me, and I love how the actress is portraying the character.
yeah, yeah. I think with how with all the cast, you know, in the show in Ahsoka, I think that they've been cast really well. It's not like you know, oh, this person kind of looks a bit like the animated character, so we'll include them. It's been well thought out, well done. Even the costume design, and you know, I think costume design is something that very rarely gets mentioned, but it's done again so well and so to the animated style, just in live action form. I mean, when you see Sabine sort of later on in the episode pulling out her Mandalorian armor, and it's the same tone, the same style as it was in Rebels. It brings back all those memories again, but it just looks really good.
Oh, 100%. Like, I'm very, like, even going forward, like, I think Jason shows up in the next episode. I was expecting to be as annoying as Anakin, and I'm actually, like, very intrigued about the character now.
Yeah.
And so the actors that they've chosen really fit the characters, and it's not even that. It's like the writing is very on point for the characters too. Like the
Yeah.
dialogue is pretty solid. Like I was talking with a friend, and there's only 8 episodes in Ahsoka, and they're like, "Oh yeah, it feels like an 8-part movie." I'm like, "That's exactly what I feel. Every episode feels like it's movie quality." Like they did not hesitate to give good dialogue, good cinematography at all. Because like we even find out with Sabine, like the relationship with her, like Sabine is better that Ahsoka quit on her.
Yeah. No, I've got to agree with that. You know, it's just really well done. And I mean, what one of the things that I would love to know again, and we've sort of mentioned it already, is why is Ahsoka so? In a way, she's kind of really overly protective of Sabine, but also at times can't stand to look at her. And I just want to know why. What happened?
I feel it's a whole. Ahsoka's afraid. Ahsoka never finished her training. Ahsoka left the Jedi Order. Ahsoka became Fulcrum. Came in contact with Vader. Never get closure. I feel she has commitment issues, and I don't mean in a bad way, but I feel like Ahsoka just isn't complete because she was never complete.
Yeah.
And so, how can she complete somebody else's training if she's never finished? It's the same thing with Kanan. When Kanan took on Ezra, and again, Hera was the one that talked to him, and because Kanan was like, the Order 66 or the Jedi purge happened when I was just a Padawan. How am I going to train somebody if I'm not fully trained or healed as well? And so I feel that's why Ahsoka is so hesitant to train Sabine, is because she never finished her training. So she doesn't know how to finish Sabine. So it's like, okay, yeah, I'm willing to help you. I can start you. I can put you on the path. But as far as finishing, I never finished my own. So I don't know how to complete your training. And so that.
Sorry.
No, go
On that
for it, dude.
note, do you think that Sabine, you know, after the events of Ahsoka, which we still don't know how it's going to end, do you think Sabine and Ahsoka might go back to Luke? Because obviously, you know, we've already mentioned that Luke and Ahsoka have been together, sort of maybe training or you know, at least doing something.
Maybe, but I mean, now that you mention it, it's the same reason she probably refused to train Grogu. If you remember season 2, Mando.
Yeah.
Like Ahsoka just didn't feel like she was ready to do it. So I feel like she may look to Luke. She has more training than Luke, went through a lot more Jedi training than Luke. But for some reason, Luke seems to be the person that they'll probably end up to at the end. If Sabine continues on the training, or Sabine might just become very affluent with the Force in a sense that she can touch it, but enough to help her warrior skills to fight whatever she's fighting. I don't know if they're going to go back to Luke because I feel that they're saving Luke for something special, and they're not going to use Luke too much in the series.
Yeah, I mean that is an interest. I mean the whole like Luke dynamic in the live action series anyway is an interesting topic to talk on at some point.
I mean, I love what they're doing because they can bring Luke back and show us the person that we wanted to see in the sequels. And so that's what they're trying to do. But I feel with technology and maybe the amount of money costs on that, they're probably using Luke for other things. They could probably mention that they go back to Luke and do training, but at the same point, I feel it's like Ahsoka wouldn't need Luke per se because Luke hasn't finished training to a sense. And so I don't know. I feel like Ahsoka's went through the Jedi Order, trained by Anakin. The only thing she could offer him is stuff that Anakin taught her, or videos and stuff like that. But as far as using Luke to train, I feel like she might feel above that. She seems very prideful. I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know what your thoughts are.
No, I think that is one of the key things there is Ahsoka is prideful, and we see it even at the beginning of the Clone Wars, back in the movie that introduced her. She is very prideful and wants to prove to Anakin that even as a young Padawan that she can do basically the same things that Anakin can do.
So I'm just thinking, like, if I was trained by Anakin, and Anakin basically trained her to be better than he was, and to be part of everything. But if he was not there, so for like, I know Luke is going to be part of the Jedi Order and anything Jedi related after Return of the Jedi. But how developed is Luke at this point? Like, we see him train Grogu, but we don't see anybody else there. So when does Luke's order start? Because obviously it hasn't happened 5 years after Return of the Jedi, because he's still looking, and
Yeah,
Grogu left him. So I would like to see that Sabine and Ahsoka go to Luke. Like, honestly, I feel this is what I'm thinking is, like, Luke's gonna show up at some point. Like, I think that Sabine, Ezra, and Ahsoka are gonna be left on Peridea, and Luke is gonna be part of the Dave Filoni movie that's promised. That's gonna tie in the whole New Republic era, and we're gonna have Sabine, Ezra, and Ahsoka stuck on Peridea, while Thrawn goes back to the regular galaxy, and we're gonna deal with Mando, Bo-Katan, Luke, maybe Zeb, and Grogu fighting a war on one side, and then you got the other guys dealing with an issue on Peridea that somehow gets them back to the regular galaxy to flank Thrawn, and that's going to be the conclusion right there. That's just my theory.
yeah, I
So
like that.
I think
like
that's
that
Luke's.
theory.
So I think that's going to be Luke's involvement is going to be in the movie. I don't think he's going to be seen much in the TV show, but I feel they're going to use him for the movie for sure.
Yeah, and you mentioned sorry, you wanted to say about like the shipyards as a whole thing, and I think with Ahsoka and Sabine and that dynamic, and then Ahsoka going to the shipyards alone, that
which is a whole nother discussion, which I love, because it's a huge thing. It's like she talks to Heron. Heron's like, you know what? I'll meet you there, because they find this droid, and Sabine is very confident in her skills, and Huang's like, no, you don't have enough time to figure this out. And he pulls the plug, and they find out that this HK assassin droid went to Corellia, or it's from Corellia. And so now we bring into the next part of the whole episode, which is completely fascinating. You get so much story, Imperial wise, and with Hera and Ahsoka.
yeah, while at the same time Sabine is then she's done for the episode basically until the end, but you've got then the dynamic of Sabine and Hera, not Sabine and Hera, sorry, Ahsoka and Hera, and Chopper, because we can't forget Chopper.
Chopper's huge. He's a big part of this episode.
Yeah, he's part of the B story, which I would say is the shipyards part now, which is where we're heading to. And when they get there, Hera, or when Ahsoka gets to the shipyards, Hera's already talking, to the sort of higher management there, and you can already tell that something is going on, but you don't. As a viewer, you don't know what it is. You're just aware of the shipyards being what they are, and that the New Republic are starting to strip the parts of Star Destroyers and Super Star Destroyers, but you don't know what exactly is happening. So you're kind of watching the scenes, and you're going through, that they're on the transporter going through, and I mean that the size of the backdrops, which I know is sort of it's the digital screens, but
A lot of detail.
Yeah, like, we are talking of, you can see sort of nearly every rivet on an engine at one point, which is phenomenal. But you get to sort of like the control center, and that's when you start to realize that, wait, something really isn't right here. When
I mean, especially with their first introduction with what was he called? I'm just gonna say the operator, the chief operator.
Yeah,
He seemed very goofy from the start, and he was very hesitant to let them come through. And even
yeah,
on their way to the command center, he was sitting there saying, "Oh yeah, Corellia used to be part of the Empire. This is a huge shipyard." And she's like, "Okay, did anybody? What are we gonna do?" And it's like, "Well, a lot of it are ex-Imperial workers. None of them care about the politics. They just care about getting paid. So changing from Empire to New Republic isn't going to happen overnight." And you kind of already see the fishiness for them, because they're like, "Okay, well, where do you stand?" She's like, "I appeal to the investors. Whoever." So he gets the idea. He gives the impression whoever pays the most, he's going to be listening to. And so he seemed fishy from the start. And so we get that control center like you're talking about, and that's where a lot of things go differently.
yeah.
Especially
So,
with Hera, and I loved Hera in this moment. Like, I'll let you talk on her, but Hera, I loved Hera on this point.
yeah, so she's automatically thinking something's off, and she's like, any droids? What other droids? Why is there a giant hyperdrive engine just parked outside there? And you mentioned it before,
We're
when
not building anything that big, so why do you have that?
yeah, and the chief operator's like, well, he's very shifty and cagey and sketchy about it. It's like, well, and then gets a distraction sort of pre-planned to avoid any, having to answer. But Hera's there, and she's like, I'm a general. I'm telling you to tell me what is going on.
Nothing's classified for me. Like, literally, I'm pulling rank here.
Yeah, and the way that was done, and how it came across, with the actress that plays Hera, it was like, you could believe it, that she is pulling rank and getting really fed up of this guy who,
And I'm not going to lie, this is probably where I believed this actress to be the best Hera that they could have done, is because of the scene. Like,
yeah,
the scene may be underrated, but this scene here, this actress really, like, shown a lot.
yeah, yeah, definitely. She, because so like the actress, I think it's like Mary Elizabeth Winstead or something. One, she's with Ewan McGregor,
Pretty
who
close, yeah.
is Obi-Wan.
Mm-hmm.
She, but she was in Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Yeah, yeah. So it's the same. When they announced the cast of it, I was like, well, I only know her from Scott Pilgrim, and I was like, really, really. And then seeing that scene where she pulls rank, I was like, that is why she is Hera. She is Hera.
100%. I'm gonna cut you off just for 1 second, because this is one thing I love about Star Wars. Is Star Wars, the casting doesn't matter if you are Samuel L. Jackson or somebody just getting into filming or acting or whatever. Star Wars is all about casting. Like Hayden Christensen, like Natalie Portman, Mark Hamill, Harrison Ford. Like, a lot of them were nobodies before these films, and I love that Star Wars gives their chance to people we don't know about. Like, Star Wars does not need to have a full-blown named actor to drive their films. They cast based off of how they're casting. And so listening to you say no, it's called Purge, like, really, you're gonna pick this character? It's like Star Wars knows what they're doing. Like, you may not like the character, like I could not stand Reva, but I love the actress.
Yeah.
And it's like the character, like they may write bad characters, but the actresses have always been, their actors or actresses have always been on point. And so that's one thing I love about Star Wars. Is they give chances to people that are no named or have been in very small things. So sorry to interrupt you, but I just wanted to throw that in because that's one thing that I've always been impressed by with Star Wars.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to agree wholeheartedly with that, and I think that's where, again, we've said it already, but that scene where Hera pulls rank is the one where it's like they knew what they was doing when they cast this person. They knew what they was doing, and
100%.
yeah, and even then when the stuff's going down and the engine is being taken away, she's like, who authorized that? She remains calm, level-headed. She plays a general the way that a general should be, or kind of like an ex-general, because the war is over at that point, but she plays
But
it.
I mean, she still has the rank though.
Yeah,
like military is still active no matter whether you're in war or not, and so she is playing that character. It's like, I told you to stop this ship from leaving. Why aren't you listening to me? I don't care who you are. Listen to me now because this is my rank.
Yeah, and when she's like told that it can't happen, she's like, okay, plan B then. What is plan B? Makes up the plan with Ahsoka straight away, and runs to the ship, jumps in it. Chopper's there. The interaction,
And
with
Ahsoka
Chopper
basically
as well.
destroys the windows and jumps out like a Jedi would.
Yeah,
which was freaking awesome.
It's about time that we saw something like that again in live action. That was
instead of just Clone Wars. Yeah,
because Clone Wars animated, you can do anything, whereas this was
live action has restrictions because of reality versus cartoon. Like, you can't speed things up to make it look cool. Live action, you gotta, if you speed it up, you gotta make it look believable.
Yeah, and this looked believable. It was again. I mean, this episode is sort of strong point to strong point to strong point to strong point, and so you've got then the Hera Chopper chasing after the hyperdrive ring, or the hyperdrive engine.
Just a hyperdrive, yeah.
Yeah, and you've also got
Ahsoka down on Corellia fighting.
Yeah, and
a character that I don't think you really talked much about is this Inquisitor.
Yes, yeah. So I was confused at the to start with when you see him, because they mentioned this character, but earlier in the episode, but you don't know who he's just a mystery. He's got the mask on. You don't know who or what it is.
Yeah.
And so you see Ahsoka, you see the Inquisitor, lightsabers are going, and yeah, what a fight.
Yeah. Dude, I mean, you can see that Ahsoka was winning this fight. You can see that it had nothing on Ahsoka. And I don't know if Ahsoka was willing to kill him or not, because Ahsoka has that whole Jedi thing. Like, she probably could have killed him easily, but she was mostly defending herself. And then he escaped with Shin. And Shin went there to oversee the transfer of the hyperdrive. And Shin didn't really have any other purpose other than, oh yeah, we're flying by in the shuttle, Marak, I'm going to save you. And you can see that Ahsoka's skills was way above the Inquisitor, because the Inquisitor threw his lightsaber, she did a backflip over it, and then as he jumped on the ship, his lightsaber came back, and she did like this little side tilt that dodged it, which I thought was pretty cool. So this Inquisitor had nothing on Ahsoka.
Yeah,
as we see in Rebels.
Yeah, I think if Shin hadn't have got sort of not got in the way, because obviously she was on the ship, but if she hadn't have started firing on Ahsoka, that fight could have been over very quickly in Ahsoka's favor.
Oh yeah.
And when the smoke clears and you just see Ahsoka and her lightsabers coming through the smoke, and she's just
and everything's steaming behind her.
Yeah, but you see Shin and Ahsoka kind of just staring at each other with the Inquisitor next to her, and it's, to me, that kind of felt like, and I might be looking too much into it, bearing in mind, we're on episode 7 now. I think that maybe Shin was kind of trying to gauge how Ahsoka fights, because if
trying to understand her.
Yeah,
and whether episode 7 or not, I think you're right.
I think there's a lot more story to happen between Shin and Ahsoka. Definitely, something.
Because even at this point, because she's staring down Ahsoka, and we see later in the episode, Balin's like, "Yeah, I don't want to kill Ahsoka because it'd be a shame because there's so few remaining Jedi that are going to exist or that are remain." And Shin does that quick turn, like, "What are you talking about?" She's like, "I just dealt with Ahsoka. Why are you having sympathy for her? Why don't you want to kill her?"
Yeah, and I mean,
so there's definitely something there.
Yeah, I think Balin was kind of sidelined in this episode, which I don't think is a bad thing. Not in this episode. I think his inclusion maybe in the fight scene would have been too much, because we know what.
I think what they did with him is, I think his presence was enough in this episode.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's almost like if you were to have Vader in an episode and you had some Padawans and apprentices fighting each other, Vader would be like just sitting there trying to gauge on how well his apprentice was rather than get involved. He's like, "Yeah, I know I can handle this person, but I want to see how you can do." I'm not going to even lie. Balin's story on this episode has been phenomenal. Like, I did not catch it the first time. Some of the things I noticed with Balin, because he goes down with Shin to the Night Sister ruins with the map. And what they do there is phenomenal, because, like, knowing what I know now in episode 7, something is calling to him. And I did not catch it even in the second episode. And you can see that Filoni was building up to something, because after they do the whole map thing, and he's like, "All right, contact Morgan. I think we found what we need." There's a point where he's sitting there staring up into the sky as if he's waiting for something, like something is talking to him, and he doesn't know what it is yet.
Yeah.
Because why else would he look up in the sky if nothing? Like, that just seemed pointless to me when I first watched it. I was like, okay, he's looking in the sky, cool. Maybe he's thinking about Morgan, whatever. But knowing what I know now in episode 7, I'm like, okay, there's something going on more, because one of the notes I put is a quote that he said, because he was talking to Shannon. He's like, "What's going to happen when we find Thrawn?" And he says, "For some, a war. For others, a new beginning. But for us, a power beyond anything we've experienced." And I don't think Balin is talking about Thrawn. I think he's talking about the thing that's calling to him. Like, yeah, if we're going to find Thrawn, he's part of our story. Like, I don't think Balin is helping Morgan just because it's the Empire. I think he's helping her because he's got something he wants to do. Like, it's a whole agenda thing. Like, he's got the agenda. I'm being paid to do this, but I have an alternative motive of why I'm helping you. I'm not helping you because of the money. I'm helping you because it's going to complete something that I need to accomplish. So him staring at the sky, it's like, okay, we have the map. As soon as he does the map, then he looks at the sky. It's like, okay, well, what is calling to him? Even in episode 7, we have no idea what is happening. And so I'm excited for the finale, because the finale is going to hopefully tell us what happened in episode 2 of why he is helping Morgan and what is his ultimate goal. Because I don't think he cares about Thrawn. He wants to end war. So what is his goal to end this war? Like, I don't know. I found it very intriguing. Balin is a very intriguing character to me. Very intriguing.
Yeah. I have to agree with that, and I think you're completely right that he has got this ulterior motive, and I like the fact that it's not really mentioned. It isn't mentioned. You don't know what it is, what he's planning, why he's planning it, and one thing that I think might happen in the finale is I don't think Balin's coming out of it alive. I think
Honestly, this is going to sound like very douchey, and I don't mean this to be in a very unsympathetic way. I'm hoping so. Reason being, I love the actor, and I'd love to see more of him and Shin on a spin-off show. But because Ray Stevenson passed away, I'm hoping that they finished his story that would be able to honor the actor.
Yeah.
And I feel they're on their way to that. I don't know if they complete it in the series or if they're going to do it in the movie or whatever they do after this. But Balin is probably one of my favorite actors, and I'm like literally beside myself that we will not get to see this actor do anything else with this character, because this character is by far one of the most mysterious, intriguing characters that I've ever seen in Star Wars. Like, he's on par with Vader. Like, he comes on screen, you have that respect and fear at the same time that Vader protruded.
Yeah, and it's prominent in this episode as well.
Very much so.
And it takes me back to when I was a kid watching Star Wars for the first time on video. A New Hope. You see Vader walking through the corridor of the blockade runner, and you have no idea about his backstory. You have no idea who he is apart from this big menacing guy. And that's kind of what Balin's like, only more curious, because you see his face, you see his facial expressions, you hear how he sounds when he talks. It's like Vader for the modern day, only
like imagine if Vader walked in and we saw Hayden Christensen walking onto a blockade runner without all the armor.
Yeah,
that's what I would expect.
Yeah,
out of this character.
Yeah, and I think, like I say, I don't think he's going to come out of it alive, and I think because of that, Shin.
Not disrespectfully, I hope not.
Yeah, I think Shin will then join Ahsoka and Sabine and Ezra. Spoilers.
That's what I'm thinking too.
I
mean, spoiler? I don't know. I don't know if that's a spoiler because we don't know.
Well, yeah.
We know she's conflicted based on later episodes, but still, because Ahsoka confronts Shin and Shin runs away from her. So we know Shin knows she's not good enough to fight Ahsoka, but we don't know where Shin is going to end up ultimately, because Ahsoka basically said, hey, join us. And Shin's like, I don't know, but I'm going to run away. I know you're not going to kill me because that's the Jedi way, but, I would like to think that Shin is going to flip sides and be part of their team.
I would hope so. I think maybe Balin's ulterior motive, just to sort of backtrack onto that, is to find peace, and he might just stay.
I get that from him.
Yeah, because obviously he's seen the same things that Ahsoka's seen.
Because we see in, what was it, episode 6? Maybe it was episode 7. He talks to Shin about how he saw the entire Jedi Order burn.
Yeah.
So he obviously was a Jedi. And that's what I really like about Balin. It's like he probably believed in the Jedi Order. Then Order 66 happened and he was left to his own devices. As we see in like Jedi Fallen Survivor or Order. We have that Jedi that was stuck on Dathomir. It's like, okay, I was a Jedi, but now I'm accommodating to today's society. I need to be a Jedi or I need to adapt. And I think Balin did the same thing. He's like, okay, I found somebody's force sensitive, so I'm training them. So I'm going to hold on to my Jedi side, but at the same time, I'm stuck on surviving. So I don't care about killing. So when he talks about like Ahsoka, is like Morgan's like, okay, kill Ahsoka. It's like it's a shame because there's so few Jedi that remain. It's because he's sentimental. He's not. He's literally stuck between two things. It's like I'm a Jedi, but I will do what is necessary to survive. And that's why I find Balin so intriguing because he's stuck between two ideals. Like he doesn't want to kill. He'll only kill because it's what's going to help him continue.
Yeah, he's not evil, and that's what intrigues me with
Not at all.
Both him and Shin is that they're not quote bad guys. They are.
I would say they're dark Jedi, but not because like when you look at Sith or dark side, you look at Maul, Vader, Palpatine, Count Dooku, maybe even Kylo. But you look at these guys like Balin and Shin. I don't see them on the same level as them as far as evil. Like they may be as skilled as them to a point, but I don't see them as evil.
Yeah,
because you can see the morality that they're both of them are torn between. Even in Shin in what was it, episode 5? Maybe episode 5. Because she looked because Thrawn's like, oh yeah. I mentioned this earlier, like Thrawn's like, all right, you and Shin, so Balin, you and Shin, go hunt them down. Follow her. And Shin's like, I thought you promised that she'd be able to meet her friend. Like she seemed very set it back that Thrawn was going against his words. So I feel Shin is more on her word. It's like, okay, Balin taught me this, but now Thrawn is saying this. So now I'm questioning the morality of this. Like, who do I follow, Thrawn or Balin?
I think with that as well, because Shin's seen Ahsoka and seen how Ahsoka is, she's protective of her friends. And maybe that's where that morality is coming from, that Shin, she's torn between what her masters taught her, which is you need to fight to survive, and between seeing Ahsoka, which is I'm fighting for my friends and what is right. And that's why I'm really intrigued by Balin and Shin. And like I say, in this episode, it's more and more prominent that you have no idea who these guys really are and what Balin's doing, because Shin's parallel with Attack of the Clones, Anakin, and Phantom Menace Obi-Wan, where she's a Padawan. She's got the Padawan braid of which is a Jedi trait, but she's not a Jedi as such because the Jedi Order doesn't really exist. And it kind of makes me think.
Correct.
It makes me think: would she end up going to Luke? And I know I've mentioned
because at this point in the series, like her and Luke know each other at this point. Because, like I mentioned before, Ahsoka and Mando season 3, they coexist. Like they're happening on a parallel timeline at this moment. And so Ahsoka has met Luke at this point. So I'm assuming Ahsoka's teaching him things, and Luke, when you read the books and the comics, Luke is going off trying to find his own Jedi Order and all that stuff, and he finds a lot of stuff that makes him a better Jedi. And I'm sure he shares that a lot with Ahsoka, saying, hey, I found this. Where you taught about this or whatnot. So I really, really hope that Ahsoka and Luke are working together at this point. Because it explained Luke later on.
Yeah. I'm wondering as well, do you think Balin would know of Luke properly? I mean, do you think that he knows that Luke is a Jedi? Because obviously the Empire and the Republic knew that.
I would say at this point, yes, because the second Death Star has been destroyed. Luke is established as. I mean, look at the final movie, Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
Luke at that point is a Jedi Knight. I'm assuming Luke has established himself as a Jedi Knight. Maybe not Jedi Master, but he's a Jedi Knight. At least, because that's what Yoda or whatever training he went through has accomplished him. So I believe Balin understands, okay, we got this guy. Granted, Anakin Skywalker, he's got the Skywalker name, so he's powerful. Understandable why he destroyed the Empire and why Vader had compassion on him, but he's probably looking at it as like, I could probably fight Luke. And so it'd be very interesting to see what he's got a bounty hunter. I would love to see anybody that thinks they have a bounty on Luke and go one-on-one with him. Is Luke really as great as we portray him to be, or is he inexperienced at this point and he only defeated the Empire because Vader had compassion because, hey, you're my son. I'm not going to let you fail because I've been lied to for the last 10 years or 20 years that I have not had a kid. Not to only find out that he also has Leia as a daughter. Like, Anakin would have been so different if he knew his kids were born. Palpatine would not exist. Maybe the Empire would be so much different. Like, there's so many different possibilities. Because we read in the comics that Vader gets so pissed because he sends Boba Fett to hunt down the person that defeated the Death Star, only to find out that the last name is Skywalker. And then his whole perspective changes against Palpatine.
Yeah.
And he becomes his whole agenda is to convert Luke to be his apprentice to take down the Emperor. But Luke ends up changing his mind by the end of it. So like Vader is dark side at this point, like 100%. Because that's all he knows. He's like, I need to be dark side, I need to be ruthless to be able to bring balance to the galaxy. And then Luke shows up and it's like Luke has compassion on him. He's like, I know you're still Anakin. I'm gonna face you. Here's my lightsaber. Take a look at it. Be impressed on how well your son has done without your training. It's like, okay, all right, I'll go see your master. And then Vader, it's like, you know what, you're my son. I'm not gonna let you die because you're my son. And so it's just very interesting just to see the whole aspect of that.
Yeah. I mean, looking at the parallels between these, the characters in Ahsoka Episode 2 and the relationships that we all know and love from the movies, you can sort of pick different elements from each one and say, you've got the element of Obi-Wan and Anakin in Ahsoka and Sabine, but you've also got that in Balin and Shin. And it's a very interesting dynamic, which I think has worked really well in this episode.
Which is funny because they were together. They didn't really show us too much of Balin and Shin, but there's so much story with them in this episode.
Yeah. I think they were used the right amount in the most perfect way. I think anything more would have been overkill.
Agreed. Because he literally just says, all right, go to Corellia, help them finish the whole transport of the hyperdrive. That's it. And I find it convenient that they're like Shin went to Lothal. They sent her to Lothal conveniently, and then Corellia. But I think it made sense for Corellia at least. Because like, okay, we got to finish this, so I'm going to send you. I'm too important to go here, but go oversee it. Make sure that it's finished so we can be on our way. Lothal just seemed very random to me. I don't know how you thought about it, but I mean, Shin appeared basically just to fight Shan or fight Sabine to give us that conflict. Other than that, I didn't think it was important. I felt the HK Assassin's droids were enough.
Yeah. I mean, the only parallel that I can sort of think of between Shin and Sabine is they appear to be sort of the similar age, and obviously one is more one's clearly not a Jedi, and one is a dark Jedi for all intents and purposes. And it's interesting to see how they interact, and then don't speak for this entire episode because there's nothing going on. But I have to agree that I think the droids would have been enough. But it's plot armor at this point with those two. But I think.
I mean, because Sabine says there's only 2 droids. She destroyed one of them. The other one destroyed her whole thing. Like, before she even encountered Shin, her whole apartment was destroyed as far as her records while she was fighting another droid. So Sabine has a lot of training that needs to go forth, and the outcome with Shin was very expected.
Yeah. I think there is a parallel between Shin and Sabine, as there is with Baylan and Ahsoka.
The light and dark.
Yeah, and you've got Morgan sort of pulling the strings on one side, the dark Jedi side, and you've got Hera kind of pulling the strings, but in a positive way.
That's true. Actually, that's actually funny. I didn't notice that before.
Yeah, so it is an interesting parallel between the darker side of the. I don't want to use the word bad guys because, apart from Morgan, but you've got Morgan and her.
I would use the word Imperial. Just say Imperial side.
Yeah, so you've got the Imperial side and you've got the
Rebel side.
Yeah, and
because it's still relevant at this point. Like, even though the Empire has been defeated, there's still the remnant Empire or remnant Imperials and the Rebellion. I don't care if you have the New Republic and the Council, you still have the Rebellion because it's not finished.
Yeah,
and we notice it in further episodes.
It is an interesting thing. I mean, this episode for me is a standout episode of the whole season, and that is including what we see in a couple of episodes' time. Because
I mean, but still though, okay, so I've watched every episode, obviously, but I've always been curious about how it connects to the next episode, and it's very interesting to see that they released the first 2 episodes in one night, and going from episode 1 and 2, like, we're going back and dissecting everything and understanding everything that happens later on. And it's just very crazy how well written everything is. And that's what we're like really noticing at this point, is like everything has like a point to the next step.
Yeah. Including the Baylan Shin story arc. And that's, I would say that is actually, knowing what we know now, that is the standout thing of the entire season. Is you still don't know, we've said it, you don't know what their goal is.
Why is Baylan looking to the stars? What is his goal?
Why is he so eager to help
Morgan,
the Empire? I'm interested to see, obviously, the finale, but then I'm interested to rewatch the entire run. And
I mean, rewatch it with what you know now. And you will see things differently.
Yeah, I mean, watching the episode 2 earlier, I noticed things like how Baylan was acting.
So different.
Yeah.
Because I even noticed when Sabine goes back to Ezra's dwelling, I don't know if that's her place now, or she just goes there off and on just to kind of feel connected to Ezra. But
I think
this could mean nothing. But she goes back and she's pulling out all her armor, and she
yeah,
gets in the same position holding her old helmet, the way that Boba held Jango Fett's helmet, like crouching and holding it in front
yeah,
of her. Like I felt there's some kind of symbolism there of like something lost, but a future is about to be sparked because of it. Because Boba held Jango's helmet, it's like, yeah, my dad just died, and I'm holding his helmet. This means something to me. Sabine was sitting there the same way. It's like the person I was died, and now it's time to put on this helmet and be someone new.
yeah, yeah, and that's that's symbolized as well with her cutting her own hair.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she
The Kanan cut.
yeah, yeah. It's
That's what I
again.
called it. Is the Kanan cut.
I mean, but essentially, it is. It's that similarity where when Kanan did it, it was him not throwing aside, but putting aside who he was to become
Something new.
yeah, yeah,
It was basically cutting your past behind and putting it behind you
yeah,
and moving forward.
and the symbolization here with Sabine doing that is she had her butt handed to her and has
Mm-hmm.
the scar from it now. She's putting that aside. She's becoming not who she was wearing the Mandalorian armor, but something new wearing the Mandalorian armor with a goal that she knows she's messed up. Ahsoka knows she's messed up. But it's trying to, it comes across like she's trying to make amends for that, not only with Ahsoka, but with herself. And the cutting of the hair is like, right, I'm going back to a look that I had, but I'm doing it my way. I'm not losing again.
Which I think can be very similar to like how we are in our own lives. It's like we lose connection with who we are. And so sometimes we need to reconnect with who we were to be a better person for our future.
Yeah. No, that's an excellent way of putting it. And to be honest, you can kind of you can see that with Ahsoka as well at the end of the episode where she calls Sabine her Padawan again, and
That's right, yeah.
It's all this sort of, well, that happened in the past, and we're now years after that, but you need to reconnect with something from back then to make now better.
100%. It's like, yeah, we made mistakes, but let's try again.
Yeah,
There's something we learned, and because we learned, we're gonna be better than we were. And so that's how I see Ahsoka and Sabine. Is like, yeah, Ahsoka walked away from her because Ahsoka had a lot of issues, and we're gonna see more character development for Ahsoka, and we're gonna see more character development for Sabine. Even though I'm not gonna lie, Sabine still annoys the hell out of me, but I can see where her character goes.
yeah, yeah. I mean, she again, sort of in future episodes, she does things that are emotionally driven, and looking back on this episode, now knowing what we know happens in the future episodes, you can see that Ahsoka is very reserved and guarded because of emotions coming into play. Because Ahsoka was told, as a Jedi, you can't have emotions. And she saw what happened with Anakin, and she doesn't want the same thing to happen again, while she's also trying to stop a potential new threat to the galaxy.
Yeah, so you don't want to stop a new threat and create another new threat at the same
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
That's so. I mean, that makes sense on how you said it.
But I mean, were there any bad points that you thought in this episode? Like anything that really made no sense or that you just didn't like.
Okay, so with like Mando and Andor, like I loved Andor, but I'm seeing a lot of good story arcs for this, and I see Dave Filoni how he's really writing things. That to me, the only issues I've had, I don't know if it's the dialogue, or it's the writing, or it's the acting. But Sabine and Ahsoka, them together annoy the heck out of me. That's the only bad thing I can see. I don't know if it's the acting or the dialogue. Like to me, like I feel there is no connection. Like I can understand why the characters are at odds with each other, but I feel there need. I don't know. I don't know if you saw it, but I feel there's something off there. It feels awkward to me.
I think I picked up on something when I first watched the episode, because like say episodes 1 and 2 of Ahsoka came out together, so watch them one after another, and you're right, the acting seemed a bit off, but then looking
Because
back
I
on it,
love every other actor and every other character interaction. It's just those two. I don't know. Those two interacting with each other just feels off to me.
yeah, but I mean, I think looking back on this episode now, knowing what we know, I think maybe that's just how it was more written, more than the actresses, because obviously we've said a couple of times in this episode that, or in this recording, that Ahsoka and Sabine are at sort of two ends of the spectrum, where you've got one that's emotionally charged and one that doesn't want to see bad things happen. And I think maybe that's how it was written, and it might play off or pay off in the final episode.
I'm
Because
hoping because
yeah,
growing up, you know it because you grew up with the originals, and going into the prequels and seeing Jar Jar and how much Ahmed Best was treated, and then jumping into the sequels and seeing how the actress, was it, I forget her name, something Tran, the actress that played Rose,
yes,
she got a lot of hate, and it's like, guys, like I don't care if you hate the character or if the acting was bad, like don't hate the actress, and so for me, it's like I'm doing my best to look at the actress. Okay, like I mentioned, like Star Wars is all about no names. Like this is probably an actress that has done a few things, and this probably might be her biggest role. And I'm doing my best. It's like, okay, I can understand it. It's like, okay, you're learning, you're being new things, and so I'm not gonna hit on the actress, not one bit. I'm gonna sit there and say, okay, maybe they're trying too hard to write a character that just do not connect as well it should. Because I'm not gonna lie, like later on, I don't know if it's just Sabine. Maybe Sabine is meant to be hated because I cannot stand Sabine one bit in her decisions. Because most of the time I'm like, okay, like spoiler alert, she finds Ezra, and when Ezra says, "I can't wait to get till I get home," she says nothing,
she hides the truth of how she got there.
and that's mostly why I'm annoyed by the characters. Like she just, and that's probably why the way she is written. So if that's the way she's written, then she's doing a great job. Like,
Yeah, I would say that it is more the writing, because and we've said it already in this recording that Sabine is emotionally charged. So
100%.
when in a couple of episodes time, there's the bit with Ahsoka and Balin, and Sabine thinks something's happened. She's willing to sort of not give up, but do things her way to get her goal. And I think that's what it is that, again, Ahsoka and Sabine's in the war, the Empire War, but Ahsoka has seen everything. She's seen her. She was cast out of a society that she was in, and then left it behind for good. She's seen that whole society fall because of what she then found out was Anakin. So she's very guarded with letting people in, it seems. Because even when she's with Hera, there's the respect, that the mutual respect there, but it's not very friendly. Not in the sense it's like, oh yeah, we're best friends, let's go to the pub together. It's, I respect you for doing what you do. And I think Sabine is pushing boundaries more and more on Ahsoka by being someone who isn't a Jedi, who hasn't had that discipline. I don't know what you think about it, but that's just how it comes across to me, is that it's written, it's meant to be that way, that you don't like Sabine that much for her actions.
Sabine is very similar to Ahsoka. Like, Ahsoka left the Jedi Order because they rejected her, and then Sabine left the Mandalore people because she created a device or a weapon that went against her people. And so both of them have a lot to prove to reestablish their importance or their leadership in that society. It's like, yeah, I did these things, but I did it for the greater good. I made this armor or this thing that's defeating the Empire or defeating Mandalorians because the Empire forced me to do it. But then Sabine tries to redeem herself later on. And I feel Ahsoka tries to do that too, but both of them have these setbacks because both of them failed their people. Sabine failed the Mandalores. Ahsoka failed the Jedi. If both of them stayed with Mandalore and Jedi, how different would things be? Sabine probably would have been implemented into the Empire. Ahsoka probably would have been killed off or been an Inquisitor. And I fear if Ahsoka was an Inquisitor, holy hell, she'd be terrifying.
That's an interesting point, actually, because I kind of want to elaborate on something that I was thinking just when you said that about. So if Ahsoka hadn't have left the Jedi and stayed with Anakin, would anything else happen? Would the Empire be a thing that we know it? Because if Ahsoka was there, her and Obi-Wan could have probably helped Anakin more and keep him away from the dark side, because it was always going to head towards that way. But I see it more of like Ahsoka would be able to bring Anakin back before he becomes Darth Vader. So
have you seen that meme? As long as we stick together, we'll be okay.
Yeah.
And then Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Ahsoka all get separated, and everything goes awry.
Yeah.
That's what I think of. The moment you mentioned that, I'm like, what could have Ahsoka done to change Anakin? Because we even watched season 7, and Maul tells Ahsoka, Anakin is the center of everything, and Ahsoka is like, no, he would never do that. But how different would Ahsoka have changed Anakin? Would she have stopped him, or would she have, I want to say, pushed back the inevitable? Because I feel like the major point for Anakin is when Ahsoka left the Jedi Order.
Yeah, you could see when Ahsoka left the Jedi Order, you could see Anakin's distrust of the Jedi kicking in, even before Palpatine had got in his head. So
even before Ahsoka left, he noticed things were going, and I think Ahsoka was the point. It's like, okay, Ahsoka was being chased by the Jedi Order because of a false crime that she was accused of, and they were not willing to understand or listen to anything she said. And so Ahsoka's like, okay, well, I finally proved myself, even though you guys denied me every chance of redemption. So I don't trust any of you. So Anakin's, I think at that point, Anakin had a lot of distrust. And I think that was the point where he was like, you know what? We're done. Like, I think that was the final point. Because if my Padawan, who I've trained religiously, won't trust you, then why should I trust you?
Yeah, and then obviously to follow on with that, them putting Anakin on the council but not making him a master when everybody else in that room is, it's like, well, what is the point? So I definitely think maybe if Ahsoka and Anakin never parted ways, and I mean like properly parted, because obviously Anakin and Ahsoka see each other again in season 7 of the Clone Wars, where she gets the blue lightsabers from Anakin. I think
One of my favorite episodes, by the way.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that whole thing of, I wasn't a fan of Ahsoka, of the first part of the Ahsoka story, where it was like you find out where she is and what she's doing. But when she's back with Anakin and on the
Are you talking about like with Ahsoka and the two sisters, that whole thing?
Yeah,
I think.
yeah.
Not many people liked it, but it's built up to her meeting Anakin. It's kind of like this is what's happening between. I didn't care for the sisters at all, like the whole story arc there. But once you got to Anakin, I was like, okay, all right, let's go.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that one. I think once you get past the boring part that you kind of need to see to know where Ahsoka is and what she's doing, when you get to Anakin and their reunion, it's worth it. And
I'm going to say that with a lot of people listening to us, not to interject, but there needs to be story to bring us to the parts that we love. So a lot of Star Wars is going to be very bland because it's storytelling. And we're going to get the parts that we're like, oh yeah, this is what we love about Star Wars. But you got to appreciate the story in between that gets you to this point. And I didn't care for the season 7 arc with the sisters, but getting to the Siege of Mandalore, that was phenomenal.
Yeah, and obviously, spoiler alert again, but it's mentioned in a future episode of Ahsoka about the Siege of Mandalore, and I mean, just seeing that whole thing in live action was pretty good. But this episode, I was a bit dubious when it was announced that it was going to be on, like released on the same day as episode 1 of Ahsoka, because it was like, well, will it?
I felt like they had to give us 2 episodes to make us hooked on the series.
Yeah, because the first one was good. Don't get me wrong, I loved the first one. To me, then
but the second one really better.
Yeah, the second one was where you start to sort of question things, and you're beginning to notice things more about who Ahsoka is now, and what her relationship is with not only Sabine but obviously Hera and the New Republic as well. And it's I don't think there's one bad thing about this episode, because it all plays off beautifully.
And eventually, like, honestly, everything about this episode's been like, rewatching it before jumping on this podcast, like, I noticed things that I did not notice the first time. First time was pure entertainment value, but now that I'm diving deeper into a lot of the aspects of it, it's really phenomenal. Like, you guys can enjoy. You guys can have your own opinion on it, but I hope we kind of give you a little more insight onto the episode, because honestly, there's so much under the surface that we just don't see until you dissect it. And doing this podcast is one of the things that's really brought me into dissecting episodes. Like, even with the sequels, like, I'm not a big fan of the sequels, but I jump back and I dissect it. I'm like, okay, I can see things to relate to different people in the fandom where I can see where the writers or the authors are coming from. And this episode is one of those things, like continuing on into the next few episodes. Like they are really telling a story. And I wish Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau were part of the whole franchise from the beginning. Like I like J.J. Abrams, even Rian Johnson. I don't like what he did with The Last Jedi, but I can respect him.
It's a very decisive movie, The Last Jedi.
Very.
It
cinematography is amazing.
Yeah, cinematography, brilliant. Story-wise, I mean,
debatable.
Yeah, because
it all depends on who you talk to. Very debatable.
Yeah, because they had the.
I'll leave it very ambiguous on that. It's very debatable.
Yeah. Let's ignore that one put a pin in it for a later time.
100%, because I know people enjoyed that film. I personally didn't. I had a lot of issues with it, but I can understand why people enjoyed it. But for me, very debatable. Very debatable.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thanks for listening to our podcast. Like we have covered Ahsoka episode 2. So be sure to share and like our podcast. Share it with your friends. It helps us gain more viewership. And we want to be able to interact with all the fans that we have. So also be sure to follow us on Instagram, where we continue to update, post memes, news, and all that fun stuff that you guys enjoy. And then join the Discord if you want to join a community full of Star Wars fans. And that's where we will be able to, if you want to interact with us on an individual level, we will be there to be able to talk to you guys. If you are looking for merch, check our link tree. We have Entertainment Earth with a lot of licensed merch that is from Disney. You can buy lightsabers, Black Series, anything you like. Yeah, so be sure to follow us, enjoy, like, comment, and we will see you guys next week. May the Force
be with you
always.